On today's Locked On NBA Game Night, Jalen Brunson goes off. The Thunder push their winning streak to 10 games, and we're going to play an edition of Buy or Sell.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Let's get it going on Locked On NBA Game Night. I'm your host, Rylan Stiles, host of Locked On Thunder. Joining me is my co-host, Gavin, host of Locked On Knicks. And we've got a full slate to talk about on this Saturday night in the association. Gavin, both of our teams were in action tonight. Let's start with your New York Knicks, who went down to the bitter end against the Washington Wizards, pulling out a 136-132 overtime win in which Jalen Brunson went for 55. Gavin, first of all, how did the Wizards push your Knicks to overtime? And then how did Jalen Brunson just turn in this masterful effort?
Yeah, Rylan, it continues sort of a season-long trend of the Knicks playing down to their competition. And I do think in saying that, I realize it's a product of expectations being so high for the Knicks to start this year. But last season, they just dominated against teams under 500. I think they won something like 17 of their first 18 of their first 19 games against teams under 500. This year, they really struggled to start the season. The difference the last I'll say 14 games, but they've won 12 of their last 14, is they struggle and then they eventually pull it off. And more often than not, they pull it off because they have Jalen Brunson and the other team does not have Jalen Brunson. 55 points, 9 assists, his third 50-point game in under 2.5 years with the Knicks. That is second in franchise history behind only Bernard King. Obviously, it's a different world in terms of the ease of scoring, but I still think that's an incredible number given the long history of Knicks basketball. But to your question, the Wizards benefited a lot from just a subpar defensive effort from the Knicks. Playing a back-to-back, they had adjusted to using Karl-Anthony Towns as a little bit more of a blitzer in pick and rolls of late. He's been dropping more, and the Wizards just feasted on that, right? It was not a good game for Jalen Brunson, wasn't really getting around screens, and that just led to open shot after open shot, whether it was directly with the ball handler like Bub Carrington down the stretch of this game, got a few that looked like practice shots, or the Knicks rotating over, and then the Wizards just doing a nice job moving the basketball off it, spraying it around, and making shots. But down the stretch, just too much Jalen Brunson over and over again. They went back to that pick and roll with him and Josh Hart to get the rookie Alex Sarr, switched on to Brunson. Brunson cooked him incessantly, some French cuisine, and the Knicks were able to pull this off 136-132.
It was a really fun game to watch. It was fun to watch Bub and Alex Sarr and Bilal Coulibaly come together, take this Knicks team down to the wire, even though part of it was self-inflicted wounds from New York, like you mentioned, but it still took a special effort. I mean, you got 31 points from Justin Champagnie, and then you did see Bub have one of his better games where it's 17 points on high efficiency, 61% from the floor. You had Sarr post 12 points, 6 boards, 5 assists, and like you mentioned, still trying to figure things out defensively for him. But the Knicks, I think that if I would have told you entering this game that Brunson goes for 55 and Cat goes for 30 points on 68% shooting, that you would have never guessed the Knicks would be in overtime against Washington. But I know that there's high expectations. I just think that in the NBA, a win is a win, no matter how pretty or ugly it is. And the fact that with the adversity of a back-to-back and the emotional highs of the week where you're playing on Christmas and you have to pull one out late, I think this is still a pretty successful week from New York, right?
Yeah, look, they've won 7 games in a row, and I think you nailed it. This is a game that maybe not last year, but certainly past iterations of the Knicks would have lost. And I think they came into this game exhausted, probably emotionally, physically, just wanted to be home with their family. Post-holidays, the Wizards have obviously been the worst team in basketball this year. So if you're going to take anyone lightly, you're going to take them lightly. The Knicks have been guilty of that often this season. And to your point, you credit Washington, Champagnie in particular, 13 of 15 from the field, 5 of 6 from 3. They took advantage of every Knicks mistake, which they haven't really been doing this year, quietly starting to play a little bit better after a 2-22 start, had 1 2 of 4, or excuse me, 2-21 start, had 1 2 of 4. Now they lose this one, but it's another step forward. I mean, Keyshawn George, another guy going 3 for 7 from 3. I do think the only worrying part about this for the Knicks is you would like to see just to I mean, last year, the reason they were so consistent against bad teams is because their defense was so great. And there are just nights where they don't quite have it. But if there was ever an excusable one, it would be this one. You hope for more for OG Anunoby. It seemed like he after a start to the season that I think merited all NBA consideration, he's really slowed down a lot. Had the one great game against Toronto, of course, against his old team. And outside of that, has just struggled shooting the basketball, some key defensive plays late. So I don't want to say he did nothing, but you can always have more from him. Mikal Bridges continues to play well offensively, maybe as a product of just insane minutes, playing the most minutes in the league. His pick and roll defense faltered a little bit in this one. It was also part of the reason they couldn't overcome Towns and Brunson not playing so well defensively. But those two guys, just incredible. I mean, Towns, I think 10 points in the first 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. Like he just started cooking, had like one of the nastiest fadeaways you will ever see on Alex Sarr. And the Knicks can, this is a luxury they didn't have last year. They can just coast off their shot making at times, and they did that tonight. How about we flip the reins to your Thunder? What did you see from them in a win over the Hornets?
Yeah, I mean, this is their 10th straight win for Oklahoma City, and it came against the Hornets team who did not have LaMelo, did not have Brandon Miller. Like, they were just really limping. Of course, no Trey Mann or Grant Williams, who've been out for an extended period of time, but also no Cody Martin. Like, there was just nobody playing for Charlotte besides Miles Bridges. I mean, Josh Green had a quality night, 3 for 6 from 3, but it was Vasa Micic, who had 16 points on 46% shooting. They couldn't get anything going. I thought that the most impressive part from Oklahoma City was here you are after a 15-point comeback Thursday against Indiana to win that game. You come in on the front end of a back-to-back down Chet Holmgren, Alex Caruso, Lou Dort, and Cason Wallace. Wallace's first ever game missed in the NBA. And you have a wire-to-wire win in which you grew a 20-point lead. You never tied, never lost the lead, and you held the Hornets under 100 points without your 4 best defenders. And is that some banner statement because of who the Hornets are? No, but it just shows you how deep this Thunder roster is with defenders, and it kind of makes it more obvious that these early season stats from them defensively, where you can compare them to all-time great defenses, are legitimate, because without their 4 best defenders, they still, in the modern era, in a game that was pretty sleepy, did not let Charlotte crack 100 points. And that's just a trend for them over the last few months of just, it is a grind to even get triple digits.
You mentioned the 10-game winning streak. Of course, the Cup championship against the Bucks does not count towards that. I guess, what are you looking for at this point from Oklahoma City? Like what are they trying to prove? Obviously, you don't have that ultimate test until Chet comes back and you really see what the ceiling of this team is. But there is just such an extraordinary consistency from them from game to game. And the only thing you kind of question at this point is like, all right, what is the ceiling against the best teams in the NBA? And for the most part, they've kicked butt this year against the best teams in the NBA. So I'm curious, as someone who watches this team every day, what are you still looking for? And in a game this week against my Knicks, amongst some other big ones coming up, like what are you looking for going forward?
Yeah, so I cannot wait for that game against New York. I can't wait for like this whole homestand where you're going to play Memphis and Minnesota and your Knicks and the Celtics along with the Clippers in that mix. But what you're looking for is what they failed at last year in the playoffs that ultimately got them beat in the second round in a series that was decided in 6 games with a 0-point differential. So the margins were obviously thin, but they clearly had shortcomings last year in that postseason. Can you correct those? And to this point, surprisingly, because of what the record is, the answer is no. You have not been able to overcome a few different things that you watch for night in and night out. Number one is the shooting from your role players. Like Isaiah Joe cannot hit water out of a boat right now. As a team, even in this game, the Thunder shot 26% from 3. They've got to find a way, whether it's internal development or with a trade, to get better shooters on this roster, get better performance from their shooters. And the gravity of Chet Holmgren coming back would do wonders for them. But more importantly than all of that is Jalen Williams, who has had a laboring month offensively, and it feels like the book is out on how to defend him. So with this homestand coming up, where you're playing these teams that can put out that formula of, if you get really physical with Jalen Williams on the perimeter and then funnel him inside to a rim protector, he's almost non-existent offensively. Like, he had 20 points tonight against a Hornets team that is not very good, but they were able to play underneath him, and he had 20 points on 21 shots. Like, it was not a A great night from him, even on 2-pointers, which is mostly coming at the rim. He had 50. He shot 50% from the floor. You just want to see him take that next step of figuring out how to handle the physicality of an NBA game as a go-to scorer. So those two things are by far the biggest things that need correcting and biggest things that need monitoring, even as you sit on a 10-game winning streak and you sit number 1 in the West again, and everything seems like it's going according to plan.
Yeah, I'll circle back and say the Knicks version of that right now, beyond the defense from Towns and Brunson, is their bench. It was the one thing I neglected to mention. They, in a game that goes to overtime where they score 136 points, they get just 8 from their bench. Campaign inexplicably only plays 6 minutes after he'd been playing some really good basketball of late. And it's another night where he seems like on the brink of being out of the rotation with Landry Shamet back. Shamet still has to find a rhythm. His first game's back at the NBA level. And Deuce McBride, after a scalding hot start to the year, just ultra inconsistency. Like some games, like he's great. And then in other games, he's not. And like the Spurs, it took to the very end of the game for him to make a big three tonight. 1 for 5, 1 for 4 from distance. That's what I'm looking for when these two teams meet up. Can the Knicks get a big time performance from their bench in a big game? And maybe even more importantly, can they just get a week of consistent production from their bench? Because if not, this is a team increasingly, despite the fact that rotations inevitably shorten during the playoffs, like desperately needs a trade. And unlike Oklahoma City, where I think you can credit their consistency, even though the bench, to your point, some of the guys not performing as well as last year, their depth, especially in terms of defensive intensity, just allows them night to night to not lose games where they're not shooting the ball the best.
Yeah, they have the depth to withstand the storm in the regular season. We've talked these two games. Let's talk Miami and Atlanta. Let's talk Phoenix, Golden State, all coming up. But first, let's say right now, but good friends over at Robinhood Gold. Go check them out today, because with Robinhood Gold, you do not need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows you to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn a very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privilege of a high net worth at any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Go sign up today at robinhood.com/gold. Terms and conditions apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. We're back on Locked On NBA Game Nights here, talking about the NBA and the night that was from Saturday, December 28th. We're going to go now to Atlanta, where we're going to hear about what happened from Locked On Hawks between the Hawks and the Heat.
Hello, friends. My name is Brad Roland. I'm the host of the Locked On Hawks podcast, and the Hawks win their 3rd consecutive game here on this Saturday afternoon, toppling the Miami Heat 120-110. It was a nice offensive game for Atlanta. They shot 15 for 37 from 3, 40% from long range. In this one, their bench was incredible for Atlanta in this game, kind of beating the Heat with their own medicine in some respects. 59 bench points for Atlanta, headlined by 26 for DeAndre Hunter, plus a big game from Jalen Johnson, 28, 13, and 5. And Trae Young with a double-double as usual, 11 points and 15 assists for the best passing guard in the NBA at this point in time. Atlanta did not play perfectly in this one across the board, but they never trailed in the second half. It was a close game all the way throughout, but the Hawks executed very well down the stretch of this one, and they end their homestand with a positive note before they head out on the road for 6 consecutive road games, and an interesting challenge here to end the year and begin the new one. We'll get into all of that and more on the Locked On Hawks podcast.
So I think what stands out from this win with Atlanta is we've had discussions, because the Hawks are one of these teams that kind of play on our day routinely so far this season, about like when to buy in, or are they maximizing this roster, or what's the outlook for Atlanta. And to Brad's point, like if you're going to get this level of bench production where you have Hunter off the bench with 26 points and Larry Nance has 10 and Garrison Matthews has 18, if you're going to get this level of bench production, especially out east, I think that that's enough to carry Atlanta throughout the regular season, and then we can cross the postseason bridge, of course, once we get there. But Atlanta right now sits as the 6th seed, tied with the Milwaukee Bucks. Both of them are 10.5 games out of first place. Obviously, that's a lofty goal for either of them to get to. But whenever you're looking at who can make the play-in versus who can be comfortably in, I like Atlanta's chances of avoiding that play-in tournament.
Yeah, I'm with you. And maybe the biggest endorsement of the game today is this wasn't their bench. This was their bench's bench, right? Garrison Matthews subbing in for an injured Bogdan Bogdanovic. Larry Nance has been playing excellent the last 5 games while Onyeka Okongwu is dealing with knee soreness. And these guys like weren't playing all season and have just come in and stepped up. And to me, that is a credit to Trae Young on a night where he shot terribly, right? 3 for 13, 2 for 9 from 3-point range, only gets to the line 4 times. You usually see him able to compensate where Miami was just completely selling out to stop him, right? Consistently putting 2 on the ball. Well, he knows how to make you pay for that, right? 15 assists. And a younger Trae Young might have forced up some shots, might have said, all right, I'm a step in past half court. I'm going to shoot from 40 feet. Took some tough ones in this game, missed some tough ones in this game, but over and over again down the stretch, you saw him consistently just make the easy play instead of like winding through 3 or 4 defenders. He let his gravity do the work for him, like setting up Nance for layups, setting up, it was Nance a couple of different times down the stretch of this game. And for Miami, like I think it was sort of a frustrating like wind down to this game that you don't typically see from Eric Spoelstra teams, where Bam was playing at the level, they were doubling, and then you just need someone to tag the roll guy and rotate over and over again. They were making that mistake, not having anyone to the ball, or at least not having anyone to the ball fast enough. Like one time, Trae got in for a lob, and Duncan Robinson just fouled Clint Capella because that was all he could do with the positioning he was in. And then you get guys on the Hawks like stepping up all over the roster, like DeAndre Hunter. Like he is maybe the favorite for 6th man of the year at this point, despite essentially missing the first month of the season. In December now, 22 points, 4 rebounds. Wait for the shooting. It's gonna blow both our hair off. 50% from the field, 47% from 3 on 7 attempts per game, 91% from the foul line. Hawks fans, let me know if he's had a stretch like this in the past. This feels like a breakout. Jalen Johnson, who conversely has been ice cold from 3, 18% this month, hits 2 big ones in the 4th quarter. Just a lot of different guys stepping up, and it makes you buy into the Hawks. The only question I have is like, why is their offense not better? Still kind of hovering around 20th. You hope with Trae Young, they can get closer to top 10. If it is, like they're a bona fide contender to win a first-round series in the East.
And, I think that besides our good friends at Locked On Hawks, we're among the most glowing representatives of the Atlanta Hawks. You and I are on a Saturday edition of Locked On NBA Game Night. So our Hawks get the win over Miami. But let's see what happened between Phoenix and Golden State. We head now to Locked On Suns.
I am just at a loss for words with this Phoenix Suns team. I'm exhausted. The Phoenix Suns lose 109-105 against the Golden State Warriors in a game in which they led going into this 4th quarter late in this game. And in a game where Kevin Durant has 31 points and Bradley Beal just, pours on a casual 26 points. And in a game where they have a season-high 12 blocks, the Phoenix Suns can't get it done. They also have yet another injury in today's game. Royce O'Neal gets injured in this game. Looks like he rolled up on that ankle. We're not exactly sure what that could be like tonight, but even though the Suns lost, you did see some energy from some guys like Josh Okogie, Oso Ighodaro continue to play a role in this game, but overall, the Golden State Warriors get their get-right game, snapping a 3-game losing streak, and the Phoenix Suns, following a win against the Nuggets, are now skidding again with 2 straight losses and still not an identity in sight, and are desperately seeking Devin Booker back in the lineup.
As Ben Garcia says from Locked On Suns, I think you put it simple. It sounds like the Suns are spiraling. They're kind of in some disarray right now, starting with the Warriors who won this game. Steve Kerr mentioned that the plan is to roll out this starting 5, which today it was Curry, Schroeder, Wiggins, Green, and Jackson Davis, but play Kuminga starting minutes off the bench. And it worked tonight. 34 points off the bench for Jonathan Kuminga, shooting 60% from the floor with 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal. Do you like the idea, of course, of having Kuminga come off the bench, or would you rather see them tweak the starting lineup to where maybe you have like a Schroeder off the bench or something of that degree? Where do you fall on the Jonathan Kuminga spectrum? Because I feel like he's one of those polarizing players that either you just love his skill set or you think he's way overvalued or just way overrated.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's working right now, right? It wasn't just a 34-point game tonight. He did a 34-point game the game before against the Clippers. Of course, that one they lost, and you didn't have Stephen Dre, so you could put some asterisks on it. But he's been playing incredible basketball. Like I'm scrolling to it now. I wrote down the numbers: 68 points, 19 rebounds, 8 assists over his last 2 games. Got to imagine that's the best 2-game stretch of his career. I thought his aggressiveness was really unlocked in this one, like over and over again. Like there were some borderline offensive fouls. Ben Garcia, who we just heard from, like probably would have called them offensive fouls, but like he went right at Royce O'Neal in the post. Might have been the play. Royce got hurt and literally just threw like 2 different shoulders into him until he cleared some room, elevated for like a short push shot, flattened Beal at one point, just knocking him to the ground and then hitting a layup. And then like the case for playing him with the starters is that he is such a weapon off the ball as a cutter. The case against it is he's not much of a weapon off the ball as a spot-up shooter, but he's really reliant on Draymond Green when he's in the starting lineup to create shots for him, and that means Steph draws 2 to the ball. Draymond's the short roll guy, right? It's what we've seen and what Thunder fans and Knicks fans occasionally have been tortured by for the last decade, like Draymond rolling down the lane, 4-on-3 as a playmaker. And tonight, with Draymond really struggling the last few games and then getting a night off against the Clippers, like he was right on point with everything, like lob after lob to Jonathan Kuminga coming down. Like I thought it was a brilliant passing game from Draymond. I thought it was a brilliant defensive game from Draymond. I mean, look what Golden State did down the stretch of this when the Suns were up 100-91 with 6:41 left, Rylan, off a Josh Okogie 3. And from there, they score 5 points the rest of the game, go nearly 4 minutes without a bucket. Like we go through them. Draymond got a block on KD. Wiggins locked up Beal. Kuminga stripped KD. Schroeder hit that big shot and then defensively forced a prayer from Okogie near the end of the game. Like it feels like everyone in that group stepped up. I've talked for 4 minutes. I haven't answered your question. For now, I would stick with the starting group, but I would trust Jonathan Kuminga to finish games if he's playing like this. But again, a lot of that is contingent on Steph and Draymond having their A game to help get him going.
Yeah, I really like having this set in stone public plan of what to do, because I think that there's a chance that Kuminga is one of those guys who is just more comfortable off the bench. You get to see up close and personal how the game is flowing, how the game's getting called, what the team needs, and it's easier to kind of inject yourself in that situation versus right off the opening tip and adapting on the fly, to where if we see him continue to build on these 2 performances, then you really have something there for a young guy who, you know, you've kind of struggled to figure out what exactly to do with, even though you know he's ultra talented. So I personally like the decision from Golden State. But coming up, it's time for another edition of Buy or Sell. But before we do that, it's time to talk about our good friends over at FanDuel. Go check out FanDuel because the NFL playoffs are almost here, Gavin, but not yet. It's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel.com, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, when new customers go, you can finish the season strong with $200 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which player will score the first touchdown, how many points each team will score, the spreads, player props, over-unders. It's thrilling. Go check out FanDuel today at FanDuel.com. When you do and you're a new customer, you can get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And if you're only into the NBA, they also have the NBA too, in which you can bet on the game between the Thunder and Grizzlies tomorrow, where the Thunder are 7-point favorites on the second night of a back-to-back. Go check out FanDuel.com. We're back on Locked On NBA Game Night, talking about the association from Saturday night, and it's time for Buy or Sell, where we're going to hit the games we have not gotten to and a topic from those teams. Buy or sell, the Sacramento Kings, who fired Mike Brown and played their first game without him on the sidelines, made the right choice.
Major sell on this one. The Sacramento Kings have had 32 coaches in team history. Mike Brown, out of those coaches, 4th best winning percentage. He's won 55% of his games. I'm going to trust the expert on this one. Our buddy Matt George, the longtime host of Locked On Kings, called this a disaster. I don't know what it solves, Rylan. Like, this is a guy who was unanimous coach of the year just 2 seasons ago. Again, that is not the sole barometer of whether a coach is good or not. Dwayne Casey won coach of the year, got fired by the Raptors, and that obviously worked out really well for them. Nick Nurse comes in and they win a championship. I think this is a different situation, right? Mike Brown is a certified defensive genius, has this Kings team playing like a top 15 defense all year, despite not having nearly that personnel to justify that kind of ranking. The offense hasn't been good. I think that issue is more so roster construction, where they added the last thing they needed this offseason, which was another score-first guy in DeMar DeRozan. It made no sense. I would have fired Monte McNair long before I would have fired Mike Brown. It feels like a change for change's sake. And I'm just struggle to see what the outcome here is. Doug Christie comes in as a first-time head coach, as far as I know, apologies from off on this, at any level, and all of a sudden does what Mike Brown couldn't and gets his team together and they make a run to the second round of the playoffs. Like, I don't think so. De'Aaron Fox has been explicit, right? If his team is on track for championship contention, he'll sign an extension. If not, he wants to be moved. So the only way I see this ending is Fox getting moved and the Kings go into another rebuild. Guess what they were doing for 16 years before Mike Brown? They were rebuilding, firing coaches, doing it all over again. So you want another 2 decades of that, Sacramento? Congratulations, you got it. I feel for the fans there. I think it sucks. Maybe it works out. Maybe I'll eat those words. Maybe Matt George will eat his words. But Rylan, I don't really get what the upside here is, even though they were playing horrible basketball. And obviously Brown bears some responsibility for that.
You hit all the right notes. I am selling this just more than you can sell anything in the world. I don't want any part of it. I think it is a pure panic move. And to your point, when have we ever seen a player? This is not speculation. This is not, sources say his agent said this or that, and his second cousin doesn't think he's going to be there forever. Yeah. The player himself went on a podcast publicly and that said explicitly that if they don't make moves to become a contender, he's not going to want to be there. Well, come on, guys. I mean, we all can read the CBA. We all know what they physically and legally can and cannot do. There is no legal levers that they can pull to create a championship in any near future, a championship level roster for the Sacramento Kings in any near future. So when have we ever seen a player do that and then put the toothpaste back in the tube? You know that Fox is gone because of those statements in all likelihood. And as you mentioned, you give up on a really talented coach who just brought you to those heights that he had this team playing at whenever they were battling the Warriors, and it took a throwback the clock series from Steph Curry to survive, and you re-energized a really passionate fan base under his watch, and you fire him for what? Because the moves that we all thought weren't going to work did not work? I just do not agree with this decision whatsoever. But our next topic, buy or sell. The Mavericks made it official that Luka will not be reevaluated for another month. So he's out at least a month. Buy or sell after this loss to Portland, the Mavs are in trouble.
Sell, big time sell. I unfortunately, because they've kind of bullied the Knicks over the years and they've taken a bunch of our players and they've played well with them. I'm not the biggest Dallas fan, but I think this team is awesome. Honestly, they're 7-3 on the year without Luka. That coming into tonight, of course, 7-2, and those weren't against cupcakes, right? Look at the teams they beat without Luka this year. Oklahoma City, the Knicks, the Suns, the Nuggets, the Hawks, the Clippers. And I watched that Knicks game. That was a low point for the Knicks because Dallas just looked in a different class without, I don't know, a guy who's going to go down as a top 20 player to ever play the sport. They were vicious. They were ball hawking. Kyrie Irving was enough offense along with Spencer Dinwiddie, who was playing great basketball. Look, there are ways this could go downhill, right? Najee Marshall, who was playing the best basketball of his career, he missed time with an illness. He hasn't quite been the same player since. Can you really rely on 2 former New York guards and Dinwiddie and Grimes to shoot the lights out like they did in that last long stretch that Luka Doncic missed? I don't know. There's a world where they don't have enough offense, but overall, I'm okay for however long it is, like at most through the All-Star break, which would be 26 games, relying on Dinwiddie, relying on Grimes to give you a little bit more, relying on Najee to give you a little bit more. PJ Washington, we saw for years on Charlotte, put up an efficient, 17, 18 points per game. The defense is going to be absolutely elite without Luka. That's an area they can be even better. Of course, Klay Thompson can always shoot more threes. I think this is still a really good team with a defined defensive identity, and you have a superstar in Kyrie Irving. Whatever you want to say about the guy, he's capable of putting up 30 points for 2 months in the NBA and doing so with great efficiency. Most teams don't have that luxury when they lose their number one guys. So I have every bit of confidence. And the biggest thing to me is I just don't think there's a team in the West, with apologies to your Thunder, that Dallas should be scared of. So if they fall down in the standings, that's fine. Luka will get some rest. They'll be good for the playoffs.
I totally agree with you. I'm selling this. I think that there's a world in which, Kyrie tonight had 46 points on 61% shooting. He was incredible, and they still lost to Portland. There's a world in which they lose some games in the short order because you now have Najee Marshall suspended for 3 more games, and you've seen Derek Lively this season in and out of the lineup. But whenever the dust settles and Najee's back from suspension and Lively's back in the lineup, they're still going to be able to win enough games to where I don't foresee them taking a tumble down the standings. And this is a team who made the finals as a 5 seed last year. So I just don't think that even with Luke out for a month, that the Lakers or the Clippers or the Nuggets are going to turn around their seasons and catch them, even though right now on paper, the lead is not all that large. Perhaps that we'll be wrong about that, but I just think that they have enough to withstand this trouble without Luka. And then whenever Luka returns, what boost he provides once he's finally healthy after battling lower leg injuries for the last year. But speaking of seedings, buy or sell, Milwaukee will finish 5th or below after losing to a triple-double from Josh Giddey tonight against the Chicago Bulls.
I buy it. I think they'll finish exactly 5th, though. I don't think they're falling further than that. Giannis is just too good, has been too good. They've taken a hit post-NBA Cup, which has been my main critique of the NBA Cup. Like, I feel like you get punished for winning it, especially like the Lakers last year. You have an older team. Like the Bucks this year, you have an older team. You put a lot of not just minutes, but hard minutes on guys. And even with the break after, like, I think we're seeing some of the ill effects, some of the downwind effects of that now. That being said, like, I think Giannis just provides a metronomic consistency to this team. They're going to beat most of the bad teams in the East. The schedule is not particularly difficult down the stretch of the season. Chris Middleton has looked a lot more spry. That's one of the only upsides of Giannis being out, is he gets a little bit more reps to be in a rhythm. They've developed their role players, guys like AJ Green, really stepping up and playing great basketball. Damian Lillard looked more like himself the last few games throughout the Cup run. I think this team has a lot that's going right. The only reason I don't say they finish higher than 5 is because I have so much confidence in the Knicks, Celtics, and Cavs. And with Paolo Banchero on the brink of coming back and Orlando staying afloat and winning some major games without him, including beating the Boston Celtics, I just think those top 4 teams are too good. And even if they'd won tonight, I don't think my opinion would have changed on that.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to buy this as well because of all that you just said. This, if you were going to climb up from here, this was your chance. Whenever Paolo and Franz are hurt, the last 10 games, though, Orlando has scrapped and clawed and fought their way to an impressive 4-6 record the last 10. Milwaukee is 5-5 in the last 10, and they're still a game and a half back of Orlando. You've not done enough to capitalize on this stretch where Orlando's battled some horrendous injuries, some horrendous injury luck to overtake them, and I don't think that you're ever going to now because, like you mentioned, the top 3, in my opinion, are pretty solidified. So you only have one team to play around with, and they already opened the door for you, and you did not bust it down and come strolling in. So I'm going to say buy that for 5 or below, but I also think it'll be 5. Now, more seeding to end it. 2 more. 76ers, they are who their record says they are. They are not going to have some miracle comeback. They are going to be battling for the play-in. They're the 11 right now. They're going to get to that 10-9-8. Buy or sell?
Buy. Easy buy for me. I can't say I have confidence in this team being a title contender. I think that went out the window. I think Sixers fans would agree that it's fair that would get out the window, but you certainly see the power of their big 3. Now 4-0 in games. Those guys start and finish. The biggest indictment on that number, of course, is that it's only been 4 games because all 3 have had their injury issues this year. But Tyrese Maxey, that Celtics game, pretty clearly his best game of the season, one of the best games of his Sixers career. We saw it down the stretch against the Jazz tonight. I mean, him and Embiid pick and roll, I think, was statistically the most dominant play in basketball last year. It still can be the most dominant play in basketball, right? You have to adjust to Maxey's speed downhill. You have to adjust to the fact that Embiid is one of the deadliest, if not this side of Kevin Durant, the deadliest mid-range shooter in the NBA. Paul George is already going downhill. I don't think that contract is going to age well. As a third option, he is still overqualified. They still have depth, even post Jared McCain. Gershon Yabusele has been playing great as a backup 5. I think there's still more than enough depth here, more than enough frontline talent to get there and challenge whoever they play in the first round of the playoffs.
And they barely pull out a win in Utah, and Embiid's riding the mascot scooter. I'm gonna buy this as well. They're gonna be a play-in tournament team because if we do the process of elimination, we just said the top 3 are solidified. We both believe in the Magic. We both believe that the Bucks are going to be the 5 seed, and then you know who the 6 seed is, Gavin, is our Hawks. So there's no room. There's no room at the end for the 76ers. They're going to be in the play-in, and who knows? Maybe they can have a spunky play-in run. But the last edition of Buy or Sell is another seeding one, and it's the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets can't do any better than the 6 seed. Buy or sell?
I am going to... That's a great question. That's the perfect number. I'm gonna sell it. I think they could overcome the Clippers, obviously, or I mean, I should not say obviously, this is not obvious, but presumably Kawhi Leonard comes back at some point and gives them a boost. I just think Nikola Jokic could go nuclear. I have a feeling Minnesota is probably the team that ultimately gets their Golden State, or Phoenix with one more move could get there, but I think they could get up to 5. That feels like the ceiling for me.
So I totally agree with you in selling it, because, whenever you look at the standings right now, there's too many variables to just say that they're going to stay at 7. They're not going to get to 6 or 5 to get above 6. Whenever you look at who's ahead of them, I like the Clippers. I think that the Clippers are such a fun story this year. I don't think it's impossible that the Nuggets figure things out and overcome the half a game that separates them. I think that the Nuggets will get it figured out and overcome the Lakers. I think that there's a chance, as we talked about with Dallas, where maybe we're wrong. Like, we're not always right. Maybe they do tumble with Luka out. So there's too many variables for me to say that they can't get above 6 whenever they have the best player in the world. So that's why I'm going to sell it. But Gavin, this was another very fun edition of Locked On NBA Game Night. Thank you again for being part of the show with me. As you can go find him at Locked On Knicks. You can find me at Locked On Thunder. We're back next Saturday night, but game night resumes on 7 days a week, including after the Sunday night games. So go check that out as well. Thank you so much. Until next time, be good and be good to one another.